Well, hello there. Thank you so much for joining me today for just a few moments to talk and to consider and to pray about Scripture. As you noticed in the original theme for today, the title, we're going to talk about feelings. And mostly that is something that is not always a part and parcel to what we share, not only in our lives, but what we share when it comes to events. Today, I am leaving to go to Spain, and I will be walking the Camino de Santiago, the way of St. James. For most folks, to hear this would mean that a historical event occurs. Pastor Tim is walking at a time and in a place. And that is, for lack of a better term, a shell of really what's happening. Instead, I as a person, as a human being, I as someone who's probably waited and prepared and thought about and dreamed about this journey for 10 years or so, comes to the crossroads to begin the journey. And so to say that I'm going on this journey, to say that I'm traveling, in and of itself gives very little about what's really going on in my heart and in my mind and in my soul. And so in sharing these things, and sharing anything that's on our heart and on our mind and on our soul, it doesn't simply allow them to go away. Instead, we turn them over to others. We turn our feelings, our lives over to others for them to understand, for them to see us in a deeper, more profound way, to experience life with us in a manner that has meaning. In today's gospel reading, we hear from Matthew, and he writes in chapter 12, verses 1 through 8, about Jesus. And Jesus is always traveling. He's always on the move. He's always walking. He's meeting with people in their houses. He's meeting with people in their villages. He is walking from place to place, sharing what's on his heart and what's in his life. You see, the practice, or the idea that the Gospel of Matthew is a story, or is a gospel, or is this interpretation of what happened with Jesus in his journey, as seen by Matthew, has a historic perspective. There are stories that are found in there. There are examples of what goes on in the life of Jesus and those who surround him that have meaning. However, in telling that story, just like telling the story about going on the Camino, or telling a story about having attended college or gone off to war or serving in the military, these in and of themselves serve as simple frameworks. They are scaffolds for the rich meaning of what's happening. Today we read that Jesus was going through a field of grain on the Sabbath, and his disciples were hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "See, your disciples are doing what is unlawful to do on the Sabbath." And I just want to stop right there. Again, this is a story of traveling. They're walking along and they're hungry. They're on a journey to a destination, but we know that the destination or the goal is not what's most important. What we learn is that the journey, the pilgrimage, how you change and transform, that is equal to, and maybe even greater than, the goal and the destination. Jesus is aware that people are hungry, and he's describing, he's opening up his feelings in his hearts about rules and regulations that keep people from eating. He says to the Pharisees, that there's a sense of shock. How could you make people be hungry? I'm reminded of the movie A Few Good Men, where Tom Cruise is describing how one of the defendants had gotten in trouble because he was guarding a prisoner, and he gave him water and bread. And in the exchange back and forth with this commanding officer for the platoon, this lieutenant, he says, "You punished my My defendant, you punish the person who I am representing because he gave a hungry man food. And that's what Jesus is challenging. He's challenging rules. He's challenging frameworks. He's literally giving his feelings out and saying, I'm not afraid to say that feeding a hungry person is way more important than a rule about the day of the week. See, he understands that Sabbath isn't just a day of the week. It honors humanity as not a machine. The Sabbath, which draws its reference from the book of Genesis, tells us that we are not slaves to something, that we are human, made in the image of God, divine, if you will, and important. So if we're starving, Jesus says that is way more important than keeping a rule from a book. I bring this up because when we talk about anything, we get a surface understanding. Jesus wants us to share heart and soul and life. Wants to say to us that that's what matters. Your humanity is far more important than any point to be made, any reference to be confirmed, any debate to be won. This morning, in preparation for my trip, I thought I feel anxious. I was feeling anxious, so I thought I'd go to the gym. Again, a surface conversation. And as I was preparing, I was kind of going through my phone and the music, and it started to play a song, and I started to run, and I started to cry. Yeah. For whatever reason, crying and running sometimes don't go together, except for me, maybe. Maybe I'm just special that I cry when I run. But the emotions that were within me could only be expressed in tears. I can't say why. I couldn't say why. And I still struggled to communicate why I was crying. However, I know that I was emotional. And that a song, and that a thought, and that a memory were drawn up into the world. And anyone who saw me could tell I was crying at the gym. Maybe a little embarrassing, but you know what? To be myself is very important, because to be a saint, as Thomas Merton would say, is to be myself. And saints cry. That's okay. And saints are real. And saints don't operate at the surface level of history. They dive deep into meaningful, emotional presence of life. Life with God, life for God, and life cherished and engaged with one another. In the movie The Way, there's this conversation between the father and the son, and the father says, this is the life that I've chosen. And Emilio Estevez, playing the son, says, life is to be lived. It's not a choice. Live your life. And so I invite you this day to go out and pick the heads of the grain and eat them. Challenge the frameworks. Challenge the surface. Go deep. Share your heart. Allow others to share their hearts with you. And know that this is dangerous work, but it is transformative. And this is the life you were called to live. Live it for all that it is in the universe. I wish you well.